our very special guest. Dennis, all yours.
Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to I'm for Fun with Dennis Speigel. It's a pleasure to be with you again today. We had a lively and exciting podcast 2 weeks ago with Jim Shea, and we covered a lot of hot topics, and we're going to do the same today. Our title today is Attractions Design in a New Operating Era. But before I get to that, I just want to talk about a couple of things before I introduce our guests. First of all, there's a lot going on in the industry and in the world, as we all know. The California theme parks is a hot topic right now. And as we know, Disneyland, Universal, Magic Mountain, and the other attractions out in California are still not open. And it's come to a point where the chairman of Disney Experiences, Parks and Products, Josh D'Amaro, has gone to the government many times, and yesterday had a conversation, and he pleaded with them to, it's time to get these parks open. And I certainly agree with that, and we'll hear Keith's comments on that in a few minutes. When you look at Orange County and you look at Anaheim, there are 80,000 jobs in that area that literally depend on theme parks, Knott's Berry Farm. So it's important and quite frankly, long overdue and late that those parks haven't opened. As we all know, Disney does a magnificent job on basically everything that they attack. And they're ready, and they have been. And they were the first to face COVID-19 in Shanghai. And they did a marvelous job of that, both shutting down and reopening the park and getting it back into swing again. So that's one topic, and it's something that needs to be done. Another topic that we'll talk about, I'm going to ask Keith about today, is I wrote an editorial back in April about, do we open the Christmas present now, or do we save it for 2021? And really what I was talking about was the new CapEx attractions, the new rides, shows, and attractions that parks had planned to put into operation this season in 2020. We've seen some parks hold them, and we've seen some parks open them. I think the jury is still out until next year on whether what decision was the right decision. But we know this, that there was a tremendous amount of capital spent this year on rides and attractions and shows and expansions, and even new parks like the new Legoland up in Goshen, New York, which was actually put on hold and could have opened this season, but decided to hold it till 2021. And I think probably we all know this, and we're tired of hearing it, but we have to remind ourselves the COVID-19 impact. I mean, yesterday we passed 200,000 deaths in the United States, and we have 31 million cases registered around the world, and there have been 966,000 deaths as a result of COVID globally. And the difficult thing for everybody is it's still that unknown factor, and Keith and I will talk a little bit about that. We're entering into a new flu season. We're going into the fall, and we all know, and we've been told and warned that there will be influenzas that hit us this season. So what kind of impact is that going to have, and what are we looking at in 2021? So those are a few of the things that are on my mind. That are topics that I wanted to get back to. So I want to introduce my guest today, longtime friend, Keith James, owner, CEO of JRA, a design firm, happens to be located here in Cincinnati, the center of the universe. And Keith has done a magnificent job of carrying the IAAPA banner and the industry banner around the world for decades. He's well known, well respected, and liked by everybody. He's one of the few people I know that nobody ever says they don't like Keith James. Everybody likes him. Maybe Patty once in a while, but his beautiful wife. But Keith is really a longtime friend. And I want to introduce Keith. And Keith, I want you to say hello and give us a little background, a little color and insight on what's going on. And I've got a few questions for you today, and we'll just keep it rolling.
Thanks, Denny, and good morning. And as Denny said, we're literally located probably 1.5 miles apart. He's in his office, and I'm sitting in one of our extra bedrooms in our house. But yeah. More importantly, in 2 months, Danny and I will have known one another 49 years.
Oh my God.
So I still have the letter that he and Gary Wachs and Jack Rouse sent to me offering me a job in November of what year was 71?
69,
right?
70,
yeah, 71,
yes.
Right before Kings Island opened.
Oh my God.
My company, JRA, Jack Rouse Associates, we're 33 years old. But as I said, I've known Denny 49 years. I started as a seasonal employee at Kings Island as a stage manager, and have had the luxury of working in this fantastic business for that entire time. IAP has been great to me. The TEA has been great to me. You know, for years and years and years, our kids were worried because we didn't know our neighbors, but then they went to an IAPA with us and said, okay, we're not worried anymore. We know that you know everybody. In fairness, also, you all probably know my wife, Patty, who Denny just mentioned. We met at Kings Island before it opened as well, and celebrated our 41st wedding anniversary yesterday. So anyway, but thanks.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Didn't know that.
But given all the travel, I think we've really only been married 7 years. But be that as it may, thanks for having me, and this is very exciting. So at a very, very difficult and challenging time for all of us, but I love the opportunity to have a chance to virtually see everybody this morning.
Well, that's great, Keith. Thank you, and thanks for being here. I know you talk and you reach out to your counterparts in the industry, other design firms. I know you guys have had a lot of conversations, and I think one of the things our viewers and listeners want to hear this morning is, what's your impression from your discussions and diving into this aspect of changes that you've seen at JRA over the last 6 months, and how that impacts design in the industry? And we'll go down into that a little bit more.
Well, thanks, Denny. One of the things that everyone should know is I am the eternal optimist. I love the business. I can't imagine doing anything else. But I am of the opinion, and I've talked to a number of my counterparts, things are going to get tougher before they get easier. You know, we're on a wave here where so many of the operators are on the edge of bankruptcy and so forth and so on. So their investment level and their planning and their design efforts are not going to come back for a while. Fortunately, a number of the overseas projects continue. China, we have an office in Beijing. China is not back to normal, but China is back. Mm-hmm. So it's working. We all know that the Middle East has a lot of planned work, but it's coming on quite slowly, much more slowly than they thought. So I think that, you know, we're optimistic about the industry, but very apprehensive about how the next year is going to go. You know, everybody's figured out how to work virtually. We're all doing that right now as we speak. It's not nearly as much fun. You can't walk down the hall and, you know, have a conversation in the kitchen or at the water fountain, or, you know, carry on the conversation you had last night when you get on the lift in the morning, you're going up to the office. There's a very famous story about the fact that the iPhone was invented at the water fountain. well, we don't have any water fountain conversations
Yeah.
anymore. And that's not fun.
Yeah.
People are reaching out. We're working with our competitors. We're sharing work with our competitors. If they're better at something than we are, we refer them. They in turn will return the favor. We know that. But right now it's, you know, the crystal ball's a little bit shaky right now. And as I said, I'm the eternal optimist, but I'm concerned.
Keith, do you think that in industry-wide, do you think that this has affected the creativity of what firms are doing, as well as how they interface with the client to, you know, keep things moving and get that in and out feedback?
Absolutely. As I said before, you don't have the walk down the hall conversations anymore due to the lack of ability to travel. You're not able to sit in a conference room with somebody and talk about things and say, what about this? What about this? Oh, gee, we ought to go outside and take a look at that just so we know what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. Or equally importantly, you know, the friendships are a little bit harder because anybody who's new, you don't have the opportunity for the dinners and the lunches and things like that, where, you know, the social aspect of our industry comes about. And that is such a critical part of our business that, you know, once people are comfortable, then the ideas begin to flow. It's not, you know, we're not lawyers and bankers where it's words on a page or numbers on a page that are either yes or no.
You know, Keith, that's a great example, because I remember, you'll remember Chester's Roadhouse,
Sure.
Which was out in Montgomery here in Cincinnati. And the guys from Intamin were in. I was with Gary Walks, our old boss, a couple of guys from Kings Island at that time. And we were having cocktails and dinner, and we got out a napkin and we literally designed the shuttle loop. And on a cocktail napkin, and somewhere here at ITPS, I have that framed. We all kind of signed it, and it was one of those ideas that came from that casual flow and discussion. And somebody said, well, what if we do this? And they had it coming back into the station. And we said, well, what if it didn't stop? And we said, well, let's put a tail on it. If you remember the King Cobra, and when the ride came back through, if there was a brake failure, it would go up and then come back down in rather than create whiplash. But cocktail napkin, social flow, and absolutely that free form, free flow has been the life's blood of a lot of design and innovation in our industry.
And just think how many, I mean, we're all crushed that HAPA can't happen.
Yeah,
this year. And just for those of us who have years in the business, just think how many handshakes and toasts and agreements are written on the back of the napkins from the Peabody Bar in Orlando. I mean, it's, you know, that part of the industry is being missed right now. And that chemistry is critical. I think that chemistry is what's created, whether it's the shuttle loop or other things. It's kind of, hey, what do you think about this? And we're having difficulty with that. We're trying. Everybody's working really hard. Mm-hmm. But Zoom calls, you don't see body language. You don't see the person who's frowning at the end of the table, or, you know, the shy people in the room who, you know, are afraid to speak up. So you have to read the room and be able to call on them. It's not there right now, but we're trying. Everybody is trying really, really hard, because in fairness, we're all in it together. There's nobody's getting treated any differently than anyone else. But
well, as an industry, we rise and lower together. There's no question about that.
We win, we lose. I mean,
exactly. Yeah. And we want, you do, I do, and everybody watching and listening in, we want a win-win situation. I mean, when you look at our industry and you look at the communication among our executives and our supervisors, managers, all the way down to our seasonal operators, there is tremendous communication. There always has been. And that's helped foster our industry and grow the ideas. No question about it.
Well, it's so critical, Denny. I mean, look at the, to get to some specifics. I mean, look at how our industry works on the safety side of things, or on the training side of things, where, heaven forbid something bad happens somewhere. But the good part about that is within 30 minutes, everybody in the world knows about it.
Yeah, boom, boom.
And they can remedy something if need be, or they can be aware of something to watch out for. And so we're really probably only as good as the worst one of us. So, there are degrees of good, but bad is totally unacceptable. So,
yeah, that's for sure. Well, one thing that Jim Shea and I discussed last time, and I'd like to hear your perspective from the design creative side. He was talking about the manufacturing, supply, and vendor side. Is are we losing some of that talent that we have that's so important, A, and B, are we still fostering the channels for interns and young people who are interested, like you and I were at one time, and said, I want to get on that train and I want to be a part of that industry no matter what it takes?
Danny, my answer to both questions is yes. We are losing because people need jobs. People have to work. So, many of the young people who would want to go into our industry, the opportunities are simply not there. Now, from an intern standpoint, I know there are a number of firms like ours who we are desperately trying to hang on to our interns. I know that we have several right now who are instrumental in everything that we do, and I will work my ass off to keep them with us. But reality is reality. Right now, touch wood, things are okay. But, I think it's, the kids who are coming out of college right now, boy, my wife's a former university professor in dance, in the performing arts. And, how do you teach a dance class virtually? And, look at Broadway. I mean, it's not our industry directly, but an awful lot of the young people who we employed at the parks in the early days when you and I worked together went on to have sensational Broadway careers. And, there is no Broadway right now, and you can't all be Lin-Manuel Miranda and be able to put Hamilton on, Disney Plus or whatever. I wish we could, but that's just not possible. But, the young people nowadays, boy, I feel for them. Now, they're coming out, they're remarkably talented, more talented than certainly we were. And those who come behind them will be more talented than they are. But, it's a blip, hopefully. And unfortunately, it's a rather long blip.
Yeah, it is a long blip.
And so, but hopefully they'll still keep their eye on the prize and, be able to get their gold ring at some point, but it may just take a little bit more time.
Yeah, and I hope that that's one aspect that IAPA can really focus on more intensely in the future. They've always done a good job of that with the foundation and scholarships, but keeping that group of alive and interested in our industry. I have the opportunity every couple of years to go out to Kings Island to coaster stock. And it's one of my favorite events. It's so much fun. They sell it out every time they do it. People come in from Europe, from Asia, from all over North America, and then as one of the speakers. I'll give a presentation on the industry in Kings Island. If I get one thing off by 2%, they holler up at me. No, that's not right. It was the coaster went 91 miles an hour or 0.6, and it was 38 feet point. They know it. So I always get a kick and spend time with them afterwards, talking with them, because like you said, they're smarter than we are, and they know a lot more than I do about Kings Island today. One other question, Keith, that kind of ties into the design part, that, we do a lot of feasibility work here at ITPS, and I always call it the smoke and the fire situation. We've all heard that. And we're starting to see feasibility studies start to happen again. They were dormant there for months. And one of the questions that come up from the people who are looking at developing a new attraction, creating something new, whether it's small or large, it's the same thing. And has COVID affected the cost and to design a project? Are we going to see, as a developer, they're asking us, are we going to see substantial increases across the board? What would your insight be on that?
Well, one thing, Danny, I'm pleased to hear about the feasibility study work picking up, because our work goes in cycles. As the feasibilities pick up, we pick up next. The creative side of business picks up next. The manufacturers are after that. So that's really good. It's just this time period that we are going to go through. But I would think prices, I mean, I can't speak on behalf of everyone, but I think we're in for a period of time when actually prices will go down. And part of that is due to the fact that people are desperate for work. I hate to be so candid, but I think that people need the jobs. They're trying to effectively protect their families, and we all treat our companies like families, and right now it's, we need the money in order to make the payroll. I think an awful lot of the things that we put together, the things that we build and so forth and so on, down the road from the creative firms are experiencing the same thing. They have shops or companies that they want to keep in place. Most importantly, they want to keep the people in place, because let's face it, at the end of the day, it's all about the people. You don't have the people, the rest of it doesn't matter.
That's right.
And so I think that now commodities are going to cost what commodities are going to cost. And you get to a certain point where is it going to cost 95 cents or 98 cents? So at that point, what's really the difference? But I don't really think you're going to have a lot of stuff going to 125 cents. I think people will get corrected pretty quickly, because if people do that, people are going to see through them, and they're going to get removed from the list. That's not the way to treat people right now. And so I think competition is going to be very tough. I really think that, but I don't think it's going to be extra expensive. I think it's just going to be extra competitive.
That's great. That's great to hear. And that's great to be able to share with the viewers and listeners today. And some of the people, incidentally, we have almost 200 people on today, Keith, from every continent again. I always like to point to Australia and Asia because their time frames, but it's not because of me, it's because of you. They wanted to hear what you have to say. And we have a lot of some of those people who are doing feasibility studies and looking at developing. So good message for them. And that's what we want to get out. Let's dive down a little bit into some of the design changes that we are seeing as a result. We know we have masks, we disinfect, we sanitize, we thermal image, we wand temperatures, we space, we distance. And you and I know from when we were building Kings Island and planning that all the way back those 50 years ago, that we we use a formula of ECUs, entertainment capacity units, and it was something that the Disney company and Buzz Price and his team situated years ago that says, if you're giving a guest about 1.5 experiences per hour, they're doing enough to keep them happy. It doesn't have them standing in line too long. They can eat, they can see a show, they can visit a ride. We know, and we've seen this in different projects, if we shrink that number down, then they're waiting too long. If we take that 1.5 to 0.75, then they're in the queue too long, or they're waiting, they get a little antsy, they get a little upset. None of us like to stand in queue lines. And the other side of that ledger is, if we push it out and we give it to them too quickly, we're giving them 2.5 experiences per hour. We know that they're going to move through quicker, and they probably won't have another meal or maybe spend on some snacks or things to get the per capita spend that we're looking for in a park. That's all very scientifically thought out, as you know, and it's a balance and flow thing that we've used. But now, as we look at those 6 things I just mentioned a moment ago, those have to be taken into consideration, along with, at this point in time, the limitation of the number of people. So how do you see that affecting the flow and the design and the balance? Do things get bigger or smaller or higher, or what do you think? What do you see? What are you talking about?
Well, I think you have to put it all in the same great big boiling pot, because we are capital intensive. Bigger is, and higher and taller and whatever, is not possible because people don't have the money.
Right.
You know, they can't, you know, the scale increases the cost. I mean, it's not an overly complicated formula, but they can't afford to do more. We're now limited on the attendance side of things. So people were providing an excellent time, an excellent experience for the guest. The spacing is a pain, especially in the heat with the masks. Yeah. I get it, but we have to do it. I mean,
it's the number one thing that the guests
what we have
hate.
to do.
That's right.
Yeah, but we have to do the getting cashless, pre-booking. All of those things are critical, but at the end of the day, we have to figure out something that allows the operators the opportunity to make a profit. Because if they don't, the rest of it falls apart. And, you know, limiting to, oh, there was some ridiculous number, and I'm not going to throw rocks at anybody because I can't remember who it was, but limiting a theme park attendance to 1,500, I mean, he puts the point.
Yeah.
Or
yeah, you have more employees in that.
Oh gosh, yeah, and the cost, and you know, from a practicality standpoint, people don't see the entire picture. What I'm hoping, and this is not going to happen because I don't think technology works, but we all fly a lot, and we all pass through the gate that says, okay, we don't have a weapon, therefore we can get on the plane. Well, one of these days we're going to figure out how the employees can come through the gate, how the staff can come through the gate, and how the guests can come through the gate. And we know that everybody's okay once they come through the gate.
Yeah, exactly.
And, you know, some radar machine or something from some futuristic movie that says, hey, you know, everybody's all right. Let's let them all in and let's operate. Everybody's not all right. They can't go in. But, you know, so that we can get our staff numbers up, and so we can get our guest numbers up, so that the operations can function, because they're the golden goose. We have got to do something that's going to allow the operators to make money. All the things that we do, that you're right. I mean, the spacing in the queues, the cashless experiences, the pre-booking, the pre-buying of meals, and so forth and so on. We have to do all of those. And we are doing all of those, but those are interim steps. Those are things that we're going to have to do for the next couple of years, because if we can't come up with a formula for the operators, the rest of it doesn't really matter. You know, if they can't make money, then we have no reason to exist. So we have to get back to the fundamentals. Like I think you mentioned Anaheim at the beginning of the conversation. You know, I may be incorrect here. You'd know better than I would, but I don't think any of the operations in Orlando, touch wood, have had any pandemic issues from guests having come to the parks.
No, we haven't. We haven't had
Yeah,
any.
Disney. Look, the people in our world know how to take care of things. I don't understand why Disneyland can't open. I don't understand why Universal can't open, because they're going to take far better care of anything than we are on the outside. Because if the people don't behave, they're asked to go home.
Yeah.
So, and because we're private, we're allowed to do that. But you know, we take very good care of our guests. We take very good care of our staff. And, you know, it's terribly important for people to recognize that, so that the machines that feed all the rest of us can get back in operation. And yes, you're right. The question, I don't mean to avoid the questions on the specific designs. We're absolutely having to do that. And I saw something very, very fun. I think it was Canopy Lake. I'm not sure, you know, how we have the hand sanitizer running around. Everybody's got hand sanitizers everywhere. Well,
Yeah.
they actually have a comical little vehicle running around the park with the hand sanitizers on it. It's a photo spot. It's a memory. And it also is dealing with the COVID. So good for them. I mean, people are going to continue to take advantage of this, figure out things that we need to do. But right now, everything's a challenge, but we need to get our owners and operators back in business.
Let's talk, Keith, that a little bit about the guest experience at the park a little deeper. We know that our industry for many years has been going towards it's participatory, it's immersive, it's hands-on. I mean, look at the Galaxy's Edge. You get on it, you're flying the Millennium Falcon, and you've got somebody piloting the machine gun or whatever laser gun, and they're fighting, and you're into the story. But we also know that they have to wait in a queue line to get on. And again, nobody likes the queue lines, never have. And we've got a lot of different companies in our industry, Acesso, a lot of them are working on programs to shorten the length of stay. We've seen fast passes, we've seen side entry passes through VIPs. What do you see as from a guest viewpoint of protection and things happening? Are they going to be put in the hazmat suit, like the person that delivered the Emmys the other night to Jimmy Kimmel? Or how do we do that? How do we keep that immersive, participatory on the cutting edge? Because that's so much of our industry.
Well, we're having to stay current with, certainly with the CDC and so forth and so on. The technology that's in place that allows us, you know, our multiple hour queues to still be multiple hour, but have your tickets when you're walking around in the park, so that you know it's my time, or this is my 15-minute window where I come in, because we can't have the guests right next to one another, at least not right now, or until they come up with I'm going to refer to it as the therapeutics, not the vaccine, because I for one am not as confident in the vaccine as any, because as you know, I've been in the entertainment business my whole life. I have a number of friends who have passed away from AIDS. It's been around 40 years, there's no vaccine. So I think we'll come up with medicine for this.
Yeah.
And I think once we do that, then things will relax a little bit. Not relax to the point of not being careful, but relax a little bit so that we know what latitude we have and how close can people get. Is the pre-booking something that is around forever? By the way, I think it's really good. I think if it can be around forever, that would be great, because it gives the guest a far better experience. But we still have to tell the stories in the queues. I mean, one of the greatest experiences in the world is the queue for the Harry Potter ride at Universal. Everybody knows me. I can't ride the ride because it makes me sick to my stomach, but I'll stand in that queue forever. We don't want to lose those queues. We don't want to have our tickets be so efficient that you miss a significant part of the story. So it's,
Right.
you know, what do you do there? And that really is a challenge for people like us and, you know, the people at WDI and so forth and so on, to figure out how we do that. But we just have to stay as current as we can with the sciences and the technologies that go along with that, again, so that we can help the people who hire us. We can help the operators and say, okay, we can go from 25% to 50% to 75%. And oh, by the way, you don't have to stand in line for 2 hours. You still have to wait for 2 hours, but you don't have to stand in line for 2 hours.
Let's look at food for a second. We know that's the #2 revenue producer in all the theme parks and attractions, admissions, and then food. And we've seen changes to that by various operators. Are you seeing any special inputs, or are you seeing any special requests coming in from people you're working with about how to keep that important flow of revenue coming in and improve the service while maintaining the sanitation and cleanliness and distancing?
Well, the answer is yes. And what's happening there, because of the time frame that we're in, for the projects that exist, they're trying to do the, you know, pay for your meal online and so forth and so on, which,
yeah,
you know, for a lot of people, that's just fine. For people my age who are a little bit like dinosaurs with technology, that's frustrating. So they have to deal with people like me, and how do I go about doing it without leaving the park? And the operators are coming up with very, very good solutions on that, even with the attendees walking around taking orders, and, you know, so staff heavy, but they are able to accommodate it. The new designs, unfortunately, this will only last for a short period of time, is, you know, we have much bigger patios, much less indoor seating, much more spacious patios. Again, it gets back to cost, but just physically, how do we keep guests separated, but how do we do the math on the separation so that later on, when the rules are not so strict, we can add the tables, we can add the seats, we can add the experiences, and we can add the indoor air-conditioned or heated experiences. And so it's, you know, it's really pretty basic on that stuff, is physically how do you accommodate it. And unfortunately, for a P&L standpoint, an awful lot of this is taken care of by our staff, not on the design staff, but the operating staff. Is the importance of the guest relations aspect and the guest relations training of the staff is so much more critical right now, because everybody's on edge. I mean, the importance of please and thank you, and, well, you can't see the smiles anymore, but you can see it in the eyes. But the importance of the please and thank yous by the staff is far more important than it's probably ever been.
Yeah.
At least in our lifetime.
Well, one of the things we're seeing, we have companies from outside our industry come to us to look for introduction to the industry. Sbarro Pizza, which you and I are familiar with, in airports all over the world. We've probably eaten thousands of slices of that waiting for a flight. And that's just one example. They have 800 operations, and they came to us and they said, look, we can come into your industry. We can work with the Six Flags, the Cedar Fairs, the SeaWorlds, everybody, Hershey and everybody. And we can do a better job. We can be more efficient, and we can make them more money. Are you seeing or hearing anything like that from the JRA standpoint, from developers?
Well, a little bit, because they're right. The entrepreneurs figure out a way to do things. because they have no choice. And, you know, some of the big corporations that we work with, yes, they can survive and they can withstand the difficulty better than others. Entrepreneurs figure out a way. I mean, remember, well, you and I knew Greg Pansero so well.
Yeah.
He ran the pizza restaurants at Kings Island in the early days, and I would expect he made as much money for our company then as we ever have. And
he made more money than we ever did. Working there, yeah.
But,
and it was the best product in the park.
Yeah, exactly. But they figure out, they have no choice. If they want to stay in business, they have no choice. They will figure out a way to do it. Witness all the, you know, I'm a fan of a certain restaurant in the neighborhood not far from me. It's a steak restaurant where you would never think that they could go into the takeaway business. Well, if they hadn't gone into the takeaway business, J. Alexander's would be gone.
They'd be out of business.
Yeah, and good for them. And I'm a fan, and I eat there probably more often now than I used to when I would go in and sit down, just because they've figured out how to maintain their quality and bring it out to me in a bag. And so, you know, and Sparrow, very much like that. You know, other operations in other countries, same thing. They, you know, they have learned how to do things in their world, and they're bringing their world into our world, which I think is I think it's good. That's going to stay. That's not a COVID only experience. That's going to last forever.
Yeah.
So,
we're getting a few questions coming in, Keith. We just had one from, let me look up here. It says from Jeffrey D.S. in Vermont, involved with a technology company. And he said, could you please ask Mr. James how change in technologies are affecting the industry, and how will they be incorporated, and how important are they to the future of the industry? Technology.
okay, from a generic standpoint, they're more than critical because we have to stay ahead, because our guests know far more about the technology than we do. So we have to be as current as we possibly can with all technologies. How they're being incorporated is a tougher question because it's all throughout the business, whether it's on the operating side and it's something as simple as the pre-booking or the you know, things with the rides and the shows. Just technology in its own right is driving our industry.
Yeah.
Now, I think that what you have to remember, though, and what is this, Jeffrey? Was it Jeffrey? Just
Jeffrey Donald.
Okay, Jeffrey, the thing that you have to remember is we try to be on the cutting edge of the technology. We take advantage of whatever you create or your competitors create or your friends create, and we try to incorporate it in. Some of the more expensive stuff tends to be incorporated by the Disneys and the Universals first because they're the only ones who can afford it.
Can afford it,
But
yeah. Exactly.
But the technologies will all show up. However, the thing that you also have to remember at the end of the day is if the person who is your host or hostess on the ride frowns at you, the technology doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's right.
Your day is ruined. So you can never take the humans out of it. A lot of the technology experts that we work with do it in an attempt to get rid of the humans. And I do not agree with that at all. But the technology drives what we do. It allows us years ago to have roller coasters that could go in loops and corkscrews and things like that. So, you know, it's going to continue to drive and be way, way out in front. And our guests are far more current. So we have to stay in front of it.
Here's another one, Keith. Would you please ask Keith, do you think parks will want to redo existing areas within the parks rather than expand? That's from Sarah.
We're getting a bit of both with, and I'll answer that from a JRA perspective. There
Yeah,
isn't
please.
there isn't an either or. Um, it's less expensive to expand from within and grow within, just as a general rule. But can you put a new attraction in the middle of the park where everything else works and all it is really just the incremental aspect of that particular piece?
Mm-hmm.
Or are you going to expand to an entirely new area, and what's going to have the most impact? There's not a this or that. We're doing both for clients right now, and it's not for any reason other. And those are existing clients, many of whom are kind of saying, "Gee, I hope that we have the opportunity to open this after COVID is gone."
Yeah.
They're not overthinking, hey, let's design this to incorporate COVID. Let's design this because it's going to take us 2 years and by then it'll be finished. So they're trying to play both sides, and I get it. Having been on the operating side as well, I understand.
Well, I call it, our industry is mature and most of our parks are mature now. And we're going through a metamorphosis, and I call it the wasting asset complex, if you will. And sometimes we outgrow, or we've just utilized that area or attraction or whatever interest, restaurant, whatever it might be. And we have to look at those things and we have to change it. Here's another one for you. This is from Connie P in Long Beach, California. You're up early, Connie. She's with a design firm, and she said, how do you think the indoor activity and indoor design is going to be affected? How will designs occur in the future to the indoor FECs and LBEs?
That's a really good question, and it's a very, very tough situation. I'm going to cite we do some work on LBEs, not a tremendous amount, but some work, and they've been stung very badly because everything that's there is touched.
Yeah.
And so it's excruciating to see.
We've seen bankruptcies in that area.
Oh boy, and we're going to see more, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think we will too, Keith.
Yeah, and I think, as most of the folks who know me know, we do a lot of children's museum work, and everything in a children's museum is touched. So I think you're going to see the demise of many, many children's museums around the world, because that's the way the kids learn. I don't have an answer for you. We're going through issues and workshops with them every day, Connie, trying to figure out, how do we do this? How can they protect? The sanitizing is terribly important, but witness an experience Patty had yesterday with one of our grandchildren. They went on a ride. It was fun, but it took as long as the ride circuit for the young people who worked the ride to clean it.
Mm-hmm.
And they were obviously tired of cleaning it.
Yeah.
And you could tell.
You see it,
and,
sure.
And so the poor kids, the poor folks in the queue, made up of a bunch of people who were 5 and under, were getting rather impatient. So, the sanitization efforts that they have to go through, I don't envy them. And Denny, I think you're right. I think we're going to see more companies go out of business, unfortunately.
Yeah, I do too. Keith, we've only got about 10 minutes left,
Okay.
and we've got a whole board of questions coming in. So we'll just kind of attack them as quickly as we can. This is from Nathan. It says, out of these types of times, bad times of crisis, come opportunities. Where does Keith think the next evolution in our industry will come from? Does he think designers, suppliers, operators, guests, anything else?
How about if the answer was yes?
Yeah, I do too.
It's got to be all of the above. You have to take advantage of this. Otherwise, we'd all quit, stay in our homes, and hibernate. I love what we do. We will figure out how to come out of this, but we will all figure it out. And we will make mistakes. We will make mistakes along the way, but at least we're an industry that tries. I mean, you know, we'll keep trying until we get it right. But I think that guests are going to make suggestions and we're going to take them up. That's going to come through the operators more likely than through the designers or the builders. But then our clients are going to come to us and say, hey, somebody mentioned this. What do you think? And then you're going to try and figure it out. And it's going to go from us to the manufacturers and then back to the operators. And I think what will happen is there will probably be an entirely new industry that comes out of this that, Denny, your feasibility folks are going to see first. I can't predict what it's going to be, but look, I don't know where it's going to go, but that show that Hamilton did on Disney Plus, that was exquisite. Now, it was well produced, it was expensive, and probably something only a Disney could do.
Yes.
But the next generation will be affordable, and it will be meaningful, and it will work for a lot of people. And, you know, all of a sudden, that's going to go from our industry to the museum industry to the education industry. And just think if our industry was able to help the teachers right now, who are the ones suffering more than anyone else.
Yes.
You know, what about teaching by entertaining? You know, I think, you've got to get their attention first, then you can teach them anything. And we're good at getting people's attention. So I think that you'll see us gradually move into the education business.
Okay. Again, we're getting a lot of questions here.
By the way, if people want to send them, I'll be happy.
Well, we're going to
along
do
with
that.
you, we'll be happy to try and answer some of them.
Yeah, we did
Or
that with yeah, we did it with Jim Shea, and we had a tremendous number of questions come in after our last podcast, and our staff sent them out, and we're going to do the same to you.
Yeah, great.
Some are I'm going past the ones that are directed to me right now, and I'm going to you. Scroll back up, if you will. This is from Mark. He said, I'm planning a medium-sized ride park, FEC based, to open the fall of 22. With that time frame in mind, how should I approach my project from a design perspective? Should I assume that things will be less focused on sanitation? And is the COVID mentality here to stay?
You should
You've
not
touched on that a little bit, but
you should not
go
expect that the sanitizing is not going to go away.
I don't think it
No,
will
that's not
either.
going to go away, because I think this has scared us to death, and there's bound to be another one. So I think that, yes, I think the COVID mentality is here to stay, but I think it will, at a certain point, become reasonable. Right now, it's not reasonable. We're going to figure it out. Right now, we're still in crisis mode. And once we can get over this hump and we have some sort of degree of remedy, then yes, it will stay, but we'll figure out how to deal with it rather than reacting to it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's exactly right. And we've got to work through it, and we have to live it day by day and learn from that and then put it into play. But I think his name was Mark. Don't give up. Keep on working on it. And if you need some help, the industry's here for you. Here's another one from Shinkazi over in China. He says, are the days of the mega theme park development over? You call him Shin.
Yeah, Shin. In my opinion, no, they're not over at all. I think the days of the mega theme parks have always been limited because of markets. You know, that's one of those things where, you know, that they are hard. These are big, expensive things, and to make them work has never been a slam dunk. So, you know, you have to be, I don't want to say more careful now than before, because you always had to be terribly careful. But there are markets. I mean, there are other markets in China, which will get parks, and there are other markets elsewhere. I think, unfortunately, they've suffered terribly, but I believe India is going to be a market someday, but right now they're suffering far worse than
Horribly,
anyone else.
horribly. Well, they're
And
number
so,
two
yeah.
in the world now with
Yeah.
this issue. Hey, Keith, he did a add on to this. He said, "I'm interested to hear this. What will make Keith James comfortable to come back to China?"
I think that's in the control of someone else. As in, right now, I'm not allowed to. You know, I have no concerns. Patty might have some concerns, but as soon as somebody says it's okay, I'll be there. So, and I think that, by the way, that answer goes for me and everybody else like me.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, you and I, we both have grandchildren and we see them often. Mine were here yesterday at the office for a few minutes with their masks on. But I could, like you, be gone every week somewhere in the world. Keith, how many miles do you have right now? I have 12 million.
Yeah, I'm probably somewhere between 10 and a half and 11.
Okay, so together we have 23. That is, between you and I, we've been to the moon and back 50 plus times. And another, I can tell you this because one of our IT guys here, and Sean Haas figured this out for me. They said, based on the miles and the flight, the timing, and the airport, and the end, you've been in a fuselage for almost 3.5 years of your life. So
it feels like it most of the time.
Well, you have too. So I mean, and the point of that, bringing that up is, I don't want to be in an airplane right now. I have one little trip coming up, a short trip domestic, but I had somebody call me yesterday from the Middle East and want us to come over, and I said we're not traveling right now. No one is.
And I hate to admit this, but Denny, as you and I chatted at the beginning, we've known one another 49 years. I am frequently reminded by my daughters that I am right in the age target for getting really sick.
Yeah, we both are.
I don't think it. I still think it's 1971, and I still think that I'm 19.
Up here.
But I am regularly reminded of my age, and I do have a lot of grandkids, and I want to make sure that they're safe. But I don't have a desire to fly. I don't have a hesitation to fly. We did go to Florida, and Delta was exquisite in their treatment of the passengers. But it's only 2 flights that I've taken. But I don't have any real hesitation because I know that the airlines go out of their way to take care of us. Just like the parks, they have to. If they didn't, they wouldn't exist.
That's right.
But right now, the control of my travel fate is in hands other than mine.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. We're all in that same situation: plane, boat, train, car, whatever it is. Keith, we've got a few more. We've got about 2 minutes left, and I want to put the next one up to you. It says, where does Keith think the next hotspots will be on the planet? We've seen Middle East, we've seen China, other areas are built out. What's his thought?
Well, this is a hopeful thought, okay? Because we had made a lot of progress thanks to Alan and a number of folks in South America, Brazil in particular, at getting certain customs and duty issues taken care of that had been blocking our industry for donkey's years. And I would hope that when we get through this, opportunities that have existed there forever may come back. I think that they are tremendous markets on the South American continent that have been blocked for a variety of reasons. It had nothing to do. I mean, there are plenty of people, there's plenty of money. There just were things that were getting in the way of the capital investment that may have eased at this point. So I would think there's tremendous opportunity there. I've mentioned India. I worry, and that's just a timing issue. That's not a will it happen or not.
Yeah, the population,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
emerging market economies there. It's
Yeah,
just
rush is a great opportunity in many areas. You got a weather issue that in a lot of it that you have to be careful of. So, you have to go inside so that it costs more, but that's not unlike what you have to do in the Middle East.
sure. Yeah,
But
no, you have to do it.
yeah,
Well, Keith, we are at our mark. We could go on based on the questions for about another half hour here. Uh, so I just want to say thank you very much for agreeing to come on I'm for Fun and chat with us and the listeners and the viewers. After Jim Shea's podcast last 2 weeks ago, we had people saying who couldn't view because of the time frames and around the world. But one guy sent me a note just 2 days ago and said, thanks so much for doing this. While I was doing my morning walk, I put it in and I listened to you guys, and you were honest and topical. And he said, that's what we're looking for. So thank you very much for your candor, your honesty, for being a part of the industry, for being a great friend for 49 beat years. Hard to believe. I can remember when Gary Walks used to say to you, I remember when you were carrying laundry across the parking lot to the shows, and he would say to me, I remember when you were taking tickets at the front gate at Coney Island. So,
Denny, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and thanks to your whole team. I know these things aren't that easy to pull together and put on, but really appreciate it. I want to thank the viewers and the listeners, give you a little insight onto who's coming up on I'm for Fun. Our next I'm for Fun podcast is going to be Wednesday, October 7th. We have a great guy, one of, again, leaders of our industry in the water park sector, Rick Hunter. He's chairman and CEO of ProSlide. Keith, you know him well.
Sure.
And Rick is one of the most innovative, gregarious, positive people I know in the industry, works all over the world, has a tremendous number of projects still going on right now. He and I talked a couple of weeks ago when I asked him to be on. So he's going to talk about that, the water park industry, and we'll share some other views. And then following Rick, we're going to have Jane Cooper. And Jane is on, she's going to be on November 4th. Jane, of course, is president and COO of Hirsch and Family Entertainment. That group of great parks, Silver Dollar City, one of my favorite parks in the world, Dollywood, one of my favorite parks in the world, and a litany of other parks and operations. And then we're going to be followed by Rene Aziz from Mexico. We're working out the date with Rene right now. He's going to talk about what's going on in Mexico. They're been hit very hard down there with COVID and some other issues. And the same thing from a fellow you just mentioned, Keith, Alain Baldacci, so from Brazil, who is one of the really leaders of South America. And hopefully we might be able to get Marcelo Goodglass, the godfather of South America and the Brazilian parks, to join us also on that podcast. So we have about 6 or 7 more people lined up right now. And we've really got some interesting topics. We try to keep it timely with what's going on. So we look forward to having you back with us on our next one. And I would say 2 things to you that I like to end up with. Keep in mind that we're not here for a long time. We're here for a good time in our industry. And if we can't have fun, how do we sell fun? And Keith and I, as you've heard many times, we've had a lot of fun through the years and things we can't talk about on the podcast. And the other thing is we all work in a great industry. We don't put smoke in the skies. We don't pollute the rivers. What we really do at the end of the day is we put smiles on people's faces, and we make memories. And I can't think of anything better than that. And I want to thank everybody, and we'll see you on our next I'm for Fun podcast. Thank you. Thanks, Keith.
Take care, everybody. Thanks, Denny.